Lori, it's after 7 o'clock. Oh.
And that one on the air.
Evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you and also call to order the Bedford Township Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for June 4th. And why don't we start over here with Tom and have us all introduce ourselves.
Tom Zebek. I am also on the Planning Commission. I'm the liaison to the BZA.
I'm Arvind Shah.
Jake Lake.
Bob Potter.
George Welling.
Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning.
I'm Dennis Kohler, Building Inspector.
Phil Goldsmith, Township Attorney.
Karen Kincaid, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you, everyone. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Karen, would you like to call the roll call?
Mr. Zebek?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Lake?
Here.
Mr. Potter?
Here.
Mr. Welling?
Here.
Mr. Steiner is excused.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, unless there's any changes?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Agenda's approved. How about the minutes of last meeting, May 7th?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of our May 7th, 2018 meeting.
Thank you.
I'll second that one.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion to approve the minutes are passed. Okay, the next item is under old business is the continuation of the public hearing regarding the appeal of Lambertville Civic Club for a 3-day summer festival. Is there anyone here related to that? Yes. Would you like to approach the bench and say anything, or?
Potter, would you like me to briefly go over?
Well, sure, yes. Thank you.
Okay. As you all know, this was at the last meeting, and it was postponed until this meeting to come back with a list of items that must be addressed prior to granting final
Yes.
approval. I included a brief memo in your packet, and I am going to read that. The Summer Festival Committee has determined in the effort to make this a successful event, they may not be able to obtain all the required approvals, permits, etc. needed for the BZA to grant them approval at this time. Therefore, the committee would like to postpone consideration on this request to a later date. While it is not the committee's intent to abandon the Summerfest, they have indicated it is important to them to be able to address all the issues or items thoroughly and properly to make the event as safe and successful as possible, and a festival that families enjoy and will look forward to attending each year. Therefore, the committee will approach the board to ask if they can postpone board consideration until later this year or early next year, as they have received a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission and a conditional approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals to this point. And they intend to cancel this year's planned event and return to the board with the required documents, applications, permits, etc., for an event that will take place the summer of 2019. Attorney Goldsmith has been made aware of the situation, and further discussion will take place at the meeting to review possible options. And as a note, since the last BZA meeting, when the issue was considered, a meeting was held with the Planning Department, Supervisors Department, Clerks Department, Fire Department, and Legal Counsel regarding possible further review of Ordinance 400.2200 with respect to the process for approval for special events. It was agreed that further review of the ordinance should take place to determine if an amendment is warranted. Mr. Edmondson is here to represent the applicant.
Okay, is there anything in addition?
I mean, she said it all.
Okay.
We don't want to run into what we ran into last year with the Rip Fest at the high school. We just think it would be better if we get a little more organization, and we want to make it the best that we can.
Okay. So what's the intent here is to just drop it all together? Or,
No, not to drop it all together. The Planning Commission has conducted its review, made a recommendation to this board. At the last meeting, this board conditionally approved the Summerfest, provided, of course, that the Summerfest organizers could come back to this board tonight and provide all the information, data, and approvals that this board requested at last month's meeting. They've not been able to pull that all together, as Mr. Edmondson stated. They want to be very well organized, and they feel that it could be a detriment to hold the event this year without being very well organized. So they're asking, I don't think they're asking to abandon the concept or to abandon the approval. What they're asking for, and what I would recommend, is that this board postpone the matter to a date certain, and maybe the applicant, maybe Mr. Edmondson, can give you some indication as when they might want that to be, to come back with all the approvals, plans, and data that this board requested, so that they can get on the agenda for next year. That's my understanding of what their request is. With respect to a possible ordinance amendment, that's not necessarily going to have an impact on their event, and unless and until the zoning ordinance is amended. None of us know whether that's going to happen. Then, of course, it has to go through the process and be published and be adopted by our township board. So there have been some ideas discussed that may eliminate going to the Planning Commission for these types of events and come right to this board. And under some circumstances, the zoning ordinance amendment may allow administrative appeal from a board to be appointed, which more than likely would include the building official, our planning director, and maybe some other member who could administratively approve these types of events with certain guidelines and standards that would be put into the new or the amended zoning ordinance. So we don't know how that's going to come out, but for tonight and for this application, it's certainly within the board's authority to postpone this matter. The public hearing has been held, it was published, and people who wanted to speak to the issue were afforded that opportunity. Postpone it to a date certain, and there can be some discussion now as to what the board might want to do or what the applicant might want to do, so you could come to some consensus on when it would be heard.
okay, thank you, Phil. So we can actually postpone it until like a year from now, or sometime next spring, whenever you feel you'd like to try again.
That's what our
Gary.
committee was requesting.
I wouldn't go to next spring. I would do it earlier to make sure that everything is in place that this board required in its conditional approval. So if you went to this time next year and some parts and pieces were missing, that may not give them sufficient time to get those items attended to. So I would say sometime early next year.
We were looking at December or January to come back and tell you exactly. We have 90% of the stuff that you have requested. It's just not in the best interest for Bedford Township and us to move forward. There's still a few questions out there, and we want to make sure that it's absolutely perfect for the whole township.
But is December this year, January next year, is that too early in the year for the remaining items on your?
No, we probably could have presented them tonight, but there's just still a few things out
Okay,
there.
well, we appreciate that,
We just want to make it the best that we can.
okay. George?
We gave you a list of 12 items. That was quite a bit, and I thought you guys were moving really quickly on them, and you were doing a good job. I would like to drop a hint that we make sure we're in contact with the park board as you're going through all this, please. And with that, I'll make a motion that we postpone voting on this till next January.
I have a question before we support it. Last meeting motion was conditional approval shall be revoked. Do we have to mention anything about that in this motion?
I think it would be wise. There was conditional approval, so really what you're doing is allowing the applicant additional time to meet every one of the items that the board told them they had to meet for their conditional approval to be ratified. So I think that's a good idea.
And that's the best way to describe this motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So you want to amend your motion about conditional approval?
Well, I guess I was assuming that we still have conditional approval, but the final approval we will do in January?
That's fine.
No.
And it's dependent upon them providing
They have to
all
do
of
all
the
these 12
information
items, yes?
that you require them to provide.
Sure.
Karen, did you have, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Karen mentioned, and it's a good point, that whenever this next meeting is held, we'll send out a notice to all of the neighbors, all of the affected people, so that they're aware. Because communication with the folks who live in the residential district that surrounds the area is critical. If they need to know what has been approved, what the conditions are, and what the expectation is of the applicant to adhere to those conditions. So we'll send notice.
Is that part of the motion, or is that just information?
Information.
Thank you.
Okay, I support that.
Okay, so we have a motion and support. Any other discussion? Okay. Karen, would you call the roll then, please?
Mr. Welling?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Zebek?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Potter?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Next item would be new business. I'd like a motion to open the public hearing regarding the appeal of Lambertville Civic Club requesting a variance to allow a one-day charity car show at the Lambertville Civic Club. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we open the public hearing.
I'll second. Oh, you got it?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Karen, would you read the
Yes.
site analysis?
Yes. Again, the applicant is actually the Lambertville Civic Club, which is located on Monroe Road. It is for a charity car show. It's a one-day event. This request is from the Lambertville Civic Club, with Mitch Keene serving as spokesperson for the charity car show event. The request for consideration is to hold a one-day event to be held on the Civic Club property on Saturday, July 28, 2018. In accordance with Section 400.2204 of the Bedford Township zoning ordinance, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall seek the review and recommendation of the Planning Commission prior to taking any action. On May 23, 2018, the request went before the Planning Commission, where a recommendation was made with conditions to approve the request, and those minutes are included in your packet. As indicated in the submitted letter from the Piston Jammer Car Club President Mitch Keene, the car show is a charity event where the charity recipient varies from year to year. Mr. Keene said in the past they have donated money to the Wounded Warrior Project, Ike and Ella Fund, and the Northwest Ohio Honor Flight, among others, with this year's event being dedicated to aid a chosen family close to the Piston Jammer Car Club that recently lost their home to fire. Mr. Keene stated the Civic Club will sell food and beverages for spectators and participants, which will support the Civic Club as food proceeds are maintained by the Civic Club. Mr. Keene said numerous local small business owners also set up vending tables to sell their own services and/or merchandise, and local business Stevens Disposal makes available a barrier-free restroom and is utilized for trash pickup after the show. It is indicated there will be a live music throughout the day, along with adult and kid activities and entertainment, to include Hot Wheels drag racing and a traditional pinup contest planned by another organization. The submitted plot plan identifies the car show parking and vendor setups located within the fenced football field, with spectator parking in an open area south of the show area. The site provides direct ingress-egress through the subject parcel off Monroe Road. While Monroe Road is the only designated ingress-egress for the event coordinators have identified Parmalee Park as an emergency exit only to serve as a means to exit the site in an emergency situation. A site cleanup plan has been established for the following day with additional young men assisting in car club members in cleaning the site. It should be noted, while the request is for this special event has not been previously before the Planning Commission and BZA for consideration, the car show has been a successful charity event for several years prior, and there is no reason to believe otherwise this year. The request has not been previously before the township due to lack of known requirement. However, now informed of the requirement, event considerations will move through the approval process if applicable. The applicant has identified July 28, 2018 as the date of the event, with the hours of operation being from 10 a.m. until midnight. That should be clarified. In the Planning Commission minutes state the amplified music will end at midnight, which is permitted by ordinance. However, it shall be clarified where the amplified music sound will be located. Therefore, the following should be verified: hours of operation, location of music, and amplified sound. Sheriff's Department made aware of event. I did include a confirmation letter in your packet. They have been notified. The Fire Department input to ensure meets all fire codes. I know at the time that this analysis was put together, we only had a verbal communication with the Fire Department. At your seat this evening, we did receive written communication from Fire Inspector Doug Steinman. I don't even know if Mr. Keene is aware of it or not, but he has stated that they have been working with him, and they now have this questionnaire that has been provided to Mr. Keene to fill out and provide back to the Fire Department. They don't see any problem with the event, with the information they have already received. Is ingress egress controlled by flagmen? Is alcohol being served? And music amplified sound permit, and that is also confirmed and included in your packet that the permit has been obtained.
Thank you, Karen. Let's see, is there someone from the Civic Club here to comment, answer questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Keene has been authorized to speak on behalf of the Civic Club. He is with the Car Cruise
Okay,
event.
all righty. Thank you.
Yep.
State your name and address, and,
Mitch Keene, 7600 Secor Road, Lambertville, Michigan.
okay, thank you. Any additional comments other than what Karen had already described?
No, I think she pretty much covered it all. This is our 8th year doing it, or will be in consideration for the 8th year. Knock on wood, we've never had any problems before. Last year, we had a couple calls for late night loud noises. It's been addressed with the people that were doing them, but Karen covered it all.
It's always been at the same location?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Any of the board members have any questions? Yes, Harvey?
Like the other applicant, Phil, do we need any insurance coverage? And the second question is, can we impose that they turn off the music at 10 o'clock to cover the neighbors' concern, what we heard last time?
This board has the ultimate say in granting the application, and this board by law has vested in it the authority to attach reasonable conditions. So if the board were to make that decision, that's a condition that could be imposed. The noise ordinance would allow amplified music until midnight. I think that's why they applied in the fashion that they applied. But as you know, and as the board members know, reasonable conditions can be appended to an approval. So that's up to the pleasure of the board. With respect to insurance, we would not require in this type of a situation to have the township named as an additional insured because it's not on township property.
Okay. Thank you.
George? Excuse me. I know you're not selling liquor, but is liquor allowed? Can they bring their own?
We forbid it. We don't kick people out for it. There is alcohol on the premises, I will say that, but it's not sold or anything like that.
First of all, I live close by, and the music and noise went past midnight, as far as I recollect. What is a pinup contest?
It's a group of women. It's kind of like a beauty contest for them. They get dyed up in their traditional dresses, and they get their hair and makeup professionally done. There's people on site that do that, and they answer questions. It's a little beauty contest, basically, just traditionally styled.
Excuse me. And my next comment is to the board. I was wondering if, I figured the insurance was, like you said, because it's not our property, not our doings, but should we consider some of the points that we have brought up to the SUMMERFEST people that would be relatable to being part of our approval?
I think it was a pretty good standard that was set by the Planning Commission for the SUMMERFEST. It listed out a lot of key features that I thought could apply broadly in some cases, in other cases, obviously not, with regards to insurance.
Well, like they mentioned something about dealing with the park board, but they don't have to deal with the park board because it's not park land, you know. And, just, there's a few things that wouldn't even relate to these folks, you know, but I just thought, frankly, that the Planning Commission gave us a good list of items to consider anytime we come across something like this. And I was wondering if we should do the same thing with this here.
I thought it was a very good standard that was set.
Yep. Yeah.
If I could just find it. There it is.
It's in
Anything in
It's in
particular,
the
George?
minutes.
Well,
That's,
I have to turn the page, just like the song. Well, the certificate of insurance, we've already answered. We don't need the proper permit for sale of liquor, of course. Provide experienced security. I think that's important.
That's, one of the permits actually already took care of that. They sent a note to the sheriff, so that's already in the packet there.
Well, I'll just move my list here. Okay. Detailed plot plan of the site, I think we already got that. And the traffic flow, the only consideration I have there is that there's a one lane in and out once you get past that point. I don't believe you had problems with that before.
Correct.
Because I've dropped by, but it's just something that the board should be aware of, that there's only one lane in and out at a time, but it's not, everybody comes at one time and they all leave at the same time, but I didn't see a problem with that. The detailed narrative outlining the festival or the car show hours of operation, I think we've already gotten that too. We don't need park you got a music, do they need a music permit application seeing as it's in private land?
And they've already obtained that, and copy is in fact.
And let's see, provide the fire department, now they were aware of that. And the documentation of nonprofit organization. If we're working under that assumption, I think we should have proof of that.
I don't know in this case, I can't answer that.
I'm just thinking out loud, you know. And amplified noise, we've already talked about. And cleaning up the trash. A lot of these things are already taken care of, but perhaps some of these should be listed out. I just did this real briefly beforehand, or I'd have been more prepared with it, but again, compliments to the planning department.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
one issue that came up in our planning meeting when we were looking at possible ordinance amendments specific to this in previous years, and maybe Mr. Keene can address it and probably could help with this, since it looks like he's the president of the car group that is putting this on, is we did receive some resident complaints about burnouts, things like that. I guess it's only reasonable to believe that that might happen when there's classic cars assembling in one location. So that's something this board may want to consider and give instruction to the applicant on to the extent possible, and maybe instruction to all of the people that will be there exhibiting their classic cars to refrain from burnouts, things of that nature, because it is disturbing to the residents who live nearby. And I think that's a reasonable request on behalf of the residents, because again, it's a competing land use. You have neighboring residents who have the right to the peaceful enjoyment of their property. You have these folks who want to have a gathering, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. So if the two can coexist peacefully, maybe some simple instruction not to permit or allow that would be appropriate. You can consider that as part of a condition.
May I also ask, did you not have a jet car or something like that?
Actually, we have guys coming from Chicago that shoot
Right.
flames out of the back of their cars.
Okay.
They shoot 15 to 20-foot flames, and they go all across the Midwest, all across the country,
Okay.
and they do it. There's a number of us in the club that are from Bedford, and that's what we just wanted to bring back. We go to all these shows across the country,
Sure.
and we wanted to bring it back. And I know another thing we want to address as well is this year that we've never done before is we're going to put letters in all the mailboxes in the area, the neighborhood, and put free admission to it. It's $5 to get in, but what we're going to do is we're going to staple 2 wristbands to it to have them come out. It's a family environment. Half of us are dads that are in the club. There's no vulgar music. No one's getting out of hand. We're dads, first things first. So nobody gets out of hand. Hot Wheels drags the kids like. And they can go up to the cars. They can touch them. They're not show cars. They're not $1 million cars. They're driven hot rods from all the way north of Toronto to South Carolina.
Karen?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
In speaking with the inspector, that Doug Steinman, he said that is one of the things that he will address. He is aware of the flame throwing. I know at the Planning Commission, Mr. Keene indicated it was going to take place earlier in the evening, 8 or 8:30, around that time, rather than late into the evening. So I didn't know if maybe that was something.
I feel better about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was mentioned in the
Yep.
in the package we received.
You might want to, along with what our fire department is going to do in the application process through the fire department, that just a condition that appropriate fire suppression measures are there or available because of the nature of this event. Both Chief Massengill and Inspector Steinman are aware of what's been done in the past, and I think they will appropriately address that with the applicant, but if you wanted to make that a condition, you certainly can.
Most zero.
Okay. Kind of keeping a list here to make sure we have different items in the motion. For the members, are there any other questions or concerns? Tom? Yes.
I know the ordinance permits music till midnight. This discussion came up with SUMMERFEST people, and they voluntarily, because there were neighbors, cut it off at 10 o'clock. Just because it says midnight in the ordinance doesn't mean there can't be an exception. And I'm kind of thinking if what's good for one should be good for the other.
Yep.
I agree.
And the SUMMERFEST people made a commitment immediately to the board and to the neighbors. So I think they'll get some mileage out of this if that's a consideration, that it either be turned down or turned off at midnight, at 10 o'clock. Only because is it not true that the Civic Club grounds are totally surrounded by residential?
It is.
That is true.
Okay,
Except for the park, everything else is residential.
okay. It was just a suggestion.
May I ask one thing? Seeing as it's a one-day event, I was thinking 11 o'clock would be a little more appropriate, but it's up to the board. I just.
Well,
all
that's
my
true.
2
I
cents.
hadn't thought about
Yeah.
the number of days.
We have to be consistent. 10 o'clock we approved last time.
Okay.
This event is scheduled for a Saturday?
I'm sorry?
This event is scheduled for a
Correct.
Saturday?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll play devil's advocate on this one. So the ordinance says midnight, right? And
Yes.
last time, the organizers voluntarily said 10.
Right?
If we're going to address the ordinance at some point, wouldn't it be more appropriate to address the time issue when the new, or when the ordinance is addressed in whole?
Yeah, but that will take process.
Understood. Yeah.
Well, it could be, other than there was concern voiced, as Tom indicated, concern voiced at the last meeting, and the agreement was
Yeah,
to cut
we
off
have- we have
any
any-
amplified
Yeah.
music or noise at 10 o'clock. Mr. Keene, would you consider or offer anything along those lines? Does that impair your event?
I would say going forward, we could, maybe after this year. The only reason I say that is we kind of scheduled a big-time band to come in from Buffalo, New York. And they were scheduled the time from, I believe it was 10:30 to 11:30. So we were giving them a half hour to shut down and everything, to take everything down before the midnight ordinance, because we had never had a problem in the past. But going forward, we could address that.
Being a neighbor and hearing it last time, your devil advocate thing was pretty good. I know what you're saying, Shaw, but it's a Saturday night, 11:30. That really doesn't bother me as much. I know that the SUMMERFEST is 3 days. That, just the amount of time makes a difference. One day, I think we can adjust to that, and plus the fact that you're shutting them down at 11:30 anyway, which is a step ahead.
Correct.
So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Question for Mr. Keene. There were some comments before about burnouts. Is there something that you can, do you think there's anything you can do to actually be effective at controlling that?
I will address it personally. I don't know necessarily if because that's a dirt driveway on the way out, so they had to have been doing burnouts, I'm guessing, on Monroe Road. But I can definitely address that throughout the day on the PA system. I would say probably 90% of the guys that come with cars, we personally know, and they're aware of the grounds Pop Warner Field's used for Pop Warner, so we take care of it. I can address it like that as well. Look, there's neighbors around, they don't want to hear burnouts, guys getting crazy with their cars at whenever you're leaving, no matter what time it is. There could be kids playing out on Monroe Road. I'm a dad first, like I said before, so if my kids were out there and some guy's doing hole shots in his car, there's a place and time for that, so, and that's not one of them.
You might also want to consider that all activity at the site will be wrapped up by, and if that's going to be midnight, so that it doesn't carry on into the early morning hours. Just another condition that you could impose, just so it's in the meeting minutes for enforcement purposes. This is when it ends. This is when it's done.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Let's see, we need to open this up to the other folks in the audience. Before we, is there anybody else in the audience? Yes, could you approach the?
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street.
Okay.
I also own 8305, which is right side by side. There's only one piece of property between me and the Civics Club. That's Mr. and Mrs. Lux. And I've never had a problem with the Civic Club in the past, with anything that they've done. We've left the Civics Club probably at 11 o'clock and gone to bed. Our bedroom's on the back side of the house. We've never had no problem. Okay. And I think what they are trying to do is nice for the local people that want to go there and enjoy. I have 2 cars that I want to put in there this year, and I don't see a problem at all. And I got 7 letters to the Civic Club and a couple other things that was on those letters, and I've never seen a problem, and I really don't see a problem again this year. And with all the letters that were mailed out, other than Mr. and Mrs. Wellington, I guess I'm the only one from Lambert Street that's here. And I'm closer than probably anybody other than one neighbor north of me at 8321. So I don't see a problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Please give us your name and address.
My name's Dan Ogren at 2009 Giant Street in Toledo. I'm a member of the car club as well. Just quick comment on the fire show, flame show. It's not as dangerous as it sounds per se. If you're familiar with the Civic Club grounds, when you pull in on the gravel road, just before you turn on the stone driveway to the Civic Club, their building, it's a big spot of stone. That's where we do it at. I've always done it there, so there's no chance of catching anything on fire. Everything's safe. The Civic Club's never complained themselves about it. They're actually, they watch it, they enjoy it, and it's just more of a novelty, so there's no real fire danger. Corey and his dad, John Quapic, they're from Bedford. They always have fire extinguishers. We're on top of it. We always try to keep everything, under control. And same with picking up the grounds. The next day when we clean up, all of us walk along the lines with garbage bags, pick every little piece up. And the Civic Club always says it's cleaner when we're done than it was beforehand. So we've always been on good standings with them and haven't had a problem with them. So that was it.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Board members? Comments, questions? Or a motion?
Just make a comment after, talking with the SUMMERFEST and then having, Mr. Keene and the Piston Jammer Club come up. These guys have their act together. They definitely seem like they've got a regiment, a routine ready to go for this particular activity. I think I'd be in support of it.
Okay, Planning Commission made a number of points in their minutes, recommendations. Where am I going?
Well, let me
So,
make an
is there a
attempt
motion?
to make a motion.
Okay, all right, let's start there.
I make a motion to approve the request from Lambertville Civic Club with the following stipulation. They will comply with all the requirement as delineated in Planning Commission meeting. Over and above, we will ask a fire chief to make sure they have a fire suppression in case of hot rod, you call hot rod car getting into fire issue. There was a concern about burnout, so that will be monitored and controlled. All activities should be closed out completely by midnight. And I like that music itself should be terminated at 10 p.m. instead of midnight. Considering at last meeting we had a neighbor who went through elaborate detail how tough it is with the noise going on for midnight, even though I recognize this is one-day event compared to 3 days event. But I think we need to be consistent with that. And ordinance will change when it change. Anything else, Mr. Goldsmith, I should add?
No, I think you hit all the high points.
Okay.
Was there something in there about the flame throwing, the timing of that?
Yeah, friendly amendment would be at 8:30, do the flame show, 8:30 like they suggested.
Yeah,
Or is that part of the planning commission?
yeah, I do not know whether you want to tell them exact timing.
I meant by 8:30, that's,
Yeah. I think if you want to control that, we need to give them a window. So you can say that that can happen between 7:30 and 8:30, something like that.
With the flame throwing, you know, we just choose, I think it was around 9 or 9:30, because that's when it got dark out.
Okay.
It just makes it look bigger, makes it more spectacular is all. That's why we went later, because generally around 8:30 or so, it's not
Still
terribly
light.
dark out. That was the only reason why we chose that time. It looks better.
Okay,
People seem to enjoy it, so.
all right.
Well, I don't think I really am going to hold them to my amendment. I'll retract that.
So the timing, you would like to get up to 9. Okay, up to 9.
Arvin, are you saying that you want to put a time in there for the flame throwing, or leave it?
Yeah, up
Leave
to,
it to-
anywhere between 7:30 and 9. That's what they want to have it.
Looks better.
Maybe until 10 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, until 10 o'clock.
Okay. All right. We have a motion.
I would support it with an amendment to have the music go to 11:30.
I would agree with that myself.
Are you okay with that amendment?
Yeah, if majority wants that, I will go with it.
Then if we're good with the 11:30 for the music, I'll support it then.
Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion? Karen, would you call the roll?
Mr. Shaw,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Mr. Zebek,
Yes,
Mr. Welling,
Aye.
Mr. Potter.
Yes.
Motion carried.
So the amplified music's okay until 11:30 in summary?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
May I add one quick thing? Don't put stuff in mailboxes, it's illegal. My mother-in-law was the post person. Put it in the doors, put it in the paper things, but don't put it in the mailboxes.
Yeah, but thank you for continuing this event. It's good for the community.
Shut up.
Okay. So motion carried. Let's go on to the next item on new business. Look for a motion to open the public hearing regarding the appeal of Joseph and Lori Marevek. I'm not, okay, sorry, but requesting a 14-foot plus or minus setback variance. Motion?
Make a motion, we open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Karen, would you please review the
Yes, again, the applicant is Mr. and Mrs. Marevik, 596 Weber Drive. It's an R3 single-family residential. The applicant is seeking a plus or minus 14-foot separation setback variance between an above-ground pool and existing dwelling unit on an abutting property. Per section 400.401.7D, private pools states no swimming pool wall should be located less than 35 feet from any existing dwelling unit on abutting property. The proposed location of the pool is 10 feet from the rear of the home, and per building official Dennis Kohler, in reviewing the submitted site plan for a building permit, it was discovered that due to the subject site rear yard abutting the neighboring property side yard, that is included in your packet, the nearest portion of the dwelling, which is the attached garage, is a distance of approximately 21 feet from the pool, thus requiring a 14-foot separation setback variance. At this time, via email, one letter of no objection has been received from the neighboring property. And that person is the person that is immediately to the rear of the subject site. So it is the neighbor that would be affected the most. The rear of the subject site does abut the garage side of the neighboring property.
Right.
And they issued sent a letter of no objection.
Okay, Karen, thank you. Let's see, would the applicant like to approach the podium and provide any additional information or answer questions that the board might have?
Yes, sir. Joe Moravik, 596 Weber Drive. We kind of put the pool, there's only one spot we can put it because of the way the lot sits. So I went to my neighbor before I came here and kind of talked to him and asked what his thoughts were, and he didn't have any issues with it. So, so we put it in the only place we could, so that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Any board member have any question for the applicant? No? Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that has any comment on this applicant? No? Okay. Guess we can close the public hearing then.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I was going to make a couple of comments.
Sure.
All
sure.
right, so one, issue of a corner lot comes up again here. The corner lot's difficult when you basically have to have two frontages. So I think that's part one of the reason I would be in favor of this variance. The other piece was obviously the conversation with the neighbors that's documented here, neighbor providing a no objection, and that would be the neighbor that would be directly affected here in this case. Has no objections with the pool being put in with the setback that would be allowed with the corner lot. So those are a couple points I want to make on this particular issue.
Okay. Tom? Yes.
You know, this is just an observation. The neighboring property that would be affected, who was in favor of this or didn't object to it, has a dead wall on that garage. In other words, there's no windows.
Right.
Which would, in essence, permit, if the windows are open when the pool is in use, the noise will go into the house, where this is almost like a buffer.
Yep.
Good point.
Right, I noticed that. That was a good picture showing
Yes,
showing the
that
lack
whole-
of any windows.
That whole side of the house is pretty much sealed,
Sale, yeah.
the house and the garage, the way it looks. So that would definitely be a buffer.
The, I'm lost. The terminology we use, the,
Practical difficulty.
Practical difficulty.
thank you, the practical difficulty, which you may have
It's a corner
brought
lot.
up, is the fact that the corner lot, there's really no other place. That is the applicant's rear yard, really. There's no other place to put it. Okay.
I'll make a motion if we're ready.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we approve the 14-foot variance on location 596 Weber Drive in Temperance, Michigan, due to the practical difficulty of being a corner lot and does not allow for the 35-foot setback in the backyard. And also the letter of no objection from the neighbor directly, that would be directly affected by the variance.
I'll support that.
Okay. Do we need to, it's an observation that there's no windows on the side of the house. I mean, we don't need to make that part of the motion, or, not really, okay? No. All right. Okay, we have a motion and a support. Any other discussion? Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Welling?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
All right.
Mr. Potter?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. Okay. Variance is granted. Thank you. Public comment. This would be for anything that we've talked about tonight or something else. Seeing none. Board or staff comments? Tom?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Barbie? Jake?
I'm good.
I've got two thanks again to the township folks for all your support.
No matter what they said, I am not dropping off those. I want to be perfectly clear about that. Good luck with it. That's it.
Danny?
Nothing.
Phil?
Nothing, thank you.
Karen?
We more than likely will be having a meeting next month.
Okay.
So we have one in, and I believe it's, we're going to receive the rest of the information to go ahead and schedule.
Okay, super. Thank you. What?
Also, I wanted to, right, also, thank you. Tuesday meeting in July, we actually moved it back a week due to the 4th of July week. We have a number of people gone. So it will be the Tuesday following the second Monday.
That's in our schedule already, isn't it?
Yes,
For the
it
year?
is.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Well, then, by the power vested in me, I'll adjourn the meeting.
You're supposed to look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Who would like to motion me to adjourn the meeting?
It's done, all right.